So in today's video, I want to break down the weaknesses of my trading strategy. If you guys are familiar with how I trade, if you watch this channel, you know that I look for the break and retest. I look for breaks of key levels, and I look for the price action to retest those key levels to either go long or to go short, depending on the market environment. Now, being in tune with my strategy and understanding what I look for helps me identify the strengths and helps me identify the weaknesses of my strategy and helps me identify when I should strike and when I need to stay away in certain market environments. Over the last few trading days, I've noticed some price action that does not align with my strategy, and it really highlights the weakness of my strategy, the break and retest. Now, there is nothing wrong with your strategy not aligning on certain market days. This keeps you structured, this keeps you on your plan, this keeps you along a certain strategy that you can repeat and you can stay consistent with. If your strategy does not work a certain day, that does not mean that your strategy does not work. This is when you need to stay away. This is when you need to have that patience as a trader to understand that the market environment is not tailored to your strategy that particular day. So in today's video, I want to highlight my weaknesses, highlight what price action does not align with my strategy, and I hope this helps you guys out there learn your strategy a little bit better and hopes you succeed more into 2023, focusing on your strengths, focusing on your weaknesses into the new year. So to get a little bit more in depth before we jump onto the charts, I've noticed a few trading days over the last few weeks. At market open, the market has basically dropped to the downside, continued to the downside without any type of fake push to the upside. We've moved straight down without any bounces, and we've continued lower almost the entire day. We have that aggressive drop at open, and we sort of slide lower the entire trading day. Now, this type of price action simply does not align with the strategy that I look for. What I look for as a trader every day I come into the market, the first drop I'm never involved in. I am never involved in that first original drop, whether it's a drop or it's a spike. I'm never involved in the first move. What I look for is that second move. So if we move to the upside, if we go straight up, I look for the pullback and I look to go long on a retest of a key level. Now, if we move straight to the downside, like we've seen over the last few days, I look for the market to bounce. I look for that dead cat bounce, that fake bounce that I can build a position into and look for it to roll over once again. Now, I'm going to show you in today's video some examples of the market going straight to the downside at open, but never giving me that retest, never giving me that dead cat bounce, never bouncing to the upside for me to enter a position with any type of confidence. Now, of course, when I look back at the market, I see that, okay, we dropped to the downside and we just continued all day. Of course, you get that feeling of, hey, I could have just bought puts, I could have just closed my eyes, and I could have just held this thing all day. If you take Tesla, for example, it moved to the downside, it slid all day. And of course, we look back at the market and tell ourselves, why didn't I just buy puts? Now, I think this is a very dangerous way to think. You have to make sure that it aligns with your strategy. Whether you missed Tesla today or you missed NVIDIA today, an example I'll show you, there was never, in my opinion, for my strategy, an entry that I was comfortable with. So I can walk away from today understanding, hey, NVIDIA went down all day. I missed the downside. I missed the put entry. It never aligned with my strategy, so I really can't get too upset with it. I know the weakness of my strategy, and I know a day where there's no dead cat bounce, there's no bounce that I can short into. If that does not occur, then I have to stay away. I can't get FOMO. I can't just buy puts because the market's going lower. I have to wait for my strategy to align, and I have to wait for that entry that I feel confident in. So on the screen, this is the 1-minute chart of the S&P 500 futures. I look at the futures to formulate trade plans, right? I am always watching these futures charts to understand what's the market doing. Are we rejecting a key level? And if we are, is there a certain setup on an individual stock, or is there a setup right on the futures contracts that I can go ahead and play into? Now, what you'll notice about today's price action, and I will also look at a Monday, I believe it was Monday, very similar type of price action. What you'll notice here is that at open, we went straight down. We went straight down and we never retested the key level that we broke until around 10:22 today. So today, you went straight to the downside, no retests, no dead cat bounces, no areas that made me feel comfortable to enter put options. Now, what I'll look for on a day, if we could hypothetically say, we look to the downside, we look for that key level break. Now, what I'll look for to get a short entry is a few minutes after we get that flush, I'll look for the market to spike back to the upside. I'll look for that fake push to set in. I'll wait for that dead cat bounce to set up. And I'll look to see, do we start to reject at that key level? And do we start to look weak for more downside? Do we get that quick flush of the key level? Do we get the retest? And if we do, this is where I'm setting up my short entries. Now, what you'll notice about today is that we simply did not get a retest. We broke our key level at this 3870 level right here. We had that break early morning, and we simply never retested it. We never retested it until the market slowed down around mid-afternoon. We got that pushback to the upside. We did have a few rejections of that 3870, and I did take some plays off this. I took some AMD puts as we rejected this level. But at this point in the day, the price action slowed down. We started to chop sideways pretty much the entire day. And at that point, the opportunity was over. So we got that straight downside move. And of course, some traders will be aggressive. They'll take the downside move. They'll open puts very early, look for that downside move. But I have seen too many times in the past that if you get aggressive on a downside flush, sometimes you will get that retest, and that retest will take traders out of their positions. So you get a downside move. Some people will get aggressive here. You'll get that dead cat bounce. Traders will typically stop out of their puts as we get that push, but this is where I like to take my entry. I like to take my entry as those put buyers are starting to sell out of their positions. As that bounce is coming in, I'm waiting for that bounce to happen. I'm waiting for the retest. I'm waiting for it to show rejections here, and then I'm looking to formulate my entry. Today, we simply did not get it, and I missed the entire downside move. Now, of course, it's a little bit upsetting to know that you missed the entire downside move, to know that you missed some really juicy opportunities on stocks like Nvidia today, which basically flushed straight out of the gates. But I have to look at this and I have to understand that this is a weakness of my strategy, and it simply did not align today. It's a weakness that if we move straight to the downside, we don't get any dead cat bounces, we don't get any retests. That's the second part of my strategy, the break and retest. If we don't get that retest, it is very difficult for me to find an entry. I like to see those retests because I believe it sets up an actual trade plan. I like to see the retest so that I know, okay, I'm going to get in short at the retest. My stop loss is back above that key level. I have a good risk to reward here, so I can look to play this back to the downside. Now, when we get a straight down push, let's say I was starting to enter puts here, just sort of chasing this thing. Where am I getting out if it reverses on me? Where is my stop loss? At this point, the stop loss would have to be all the way back up to 3870 on the ES in this example, and at that point, it is just simply too much risk for me. So I thought that today on the S&P 500, this was a textbook example of where my strategy lacks, where I find a weakness in my strategy, where I sort of freeze up, so to say, and just don't really feel comfortable in taking advantage of the downside move. This could be to the upside as well, right? If we inverse the ES here, we'll do inverse ES, and we'll look at the inverse of the S&P 500. So we look at this inverse of the S&P 500, and we can see this goes both ways. This market moves straight up out of the gates, no pullbacks, no entries in my opinion. You guys can see right here, if I was coming into this trading day, I would have liked to see the push. I would have liked to see the pullback, the retest of this previous rejection point, turn that into a support level, and then look to go long on the retest, right? We've seen this plenty of times. I know the break and retest is something that sets up quite a bit. So when it doesn't set up, it makes it difficult for me to find that entry. And that is, again, an example of a weakness of my strategy. So here's an example on December 15th where I actually did take some shorts on the S&P 500 futures and where the break and retest really did align. So you guys can see on the morning of the 15th of December, we had a support come in on the pre-market around this 39.70 level. We broke below that 39.70. We came back, we got that dead cat bounce, and we saw over about 5 to 6 minutes, we started to turn the pre-market lows into a rejection point. Now, this is where I feel confident. This is where I strike on opportunity. I see a break of a key level, the pre-market lows. I see a rejection of the key level, the previous pre-market lows, turning into a rejection point. I set my shorts up here around that 39.70 with a stop loss over that key level, and I look for that downside continuation. Now, here on this day, we can see that this actually set up. My strategy aligned, and I took advantage of it. But on a day like today, where we just simply got that downside, no retest of the pre-market lows, just a flush and continuation, it makes it a little bit more difficult to trust that move. So I want to share with you guys another example here. This is on my birthday, actually. This is December 22nd, and this is a day that I simply missed out on everything. I missed out on all the downside. I did not get my retest, and if you look at this price action early morning, you guys can see we had a pre-market support around this 38.70 level. We had a pre-market support that stacked up here, and at open, we flushed that level. If I zoom in here, you can see we simply flushed that level right at open and we never retested it. So here you can see we had that major flush under 38.70 and we just sort of slid lower the entire day. Now, in this type of price action, I find it very difficult with my strategy to find an entry point, right? Because what I'm looking for here is a fake bounce back into 38.70, a rejection of that level, and then the continuation to set in. So we can see in this example, straight flush out of the gates, no retest of the previous lows, no rejection of the previous lows, no break and retest. And a day like this, if I review my trades, I missed out on everything. This was a day I missed out on all the downside. And when you look at this in hindsight, you can see this was probably one of the most aggressive and most beautiful downside days you could have taken advantage of, but simply the price action just did not align with my strategy. There was never a retest. Even intraday, there was no retest of previous lows. Even on this low right here, we flushed it, no retest. And then for the remainder of the day, you can see we just sort of chopped around, and it's at that point, it's a 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I just have to wrap it up for the day. The price action dies out, and you really can't find an opportunity unless you're continuing to watch this all day. You can see around 12 o'clock, we did get another flush of the lows, but again, no retest entry for me to take advantage of. So the last thing I want to share with you guys today is NVIDIA. And NVIDIA was something I was very, very confident on to the downside today, watching it for a rejection of 149, looking for the break and retest of 149. Now, what you can see from this chart is NVIDIA died all day. Put options were fantastic today. If you were in puts on NVIDIA, you made a ton of money. What happened for me today was I never got the retest of the key level that I was looking for it to break below. So if we look at the last few trading days on NVIDIA, we had a support around 149, we had a support around 149. So I know if we break 149, I want to look for us to break it, I want to look for us to retest that level, and I want to look for us to potentially get short off a retest of the 149 level. Now, if I go into today's price action, you can see the 149 level, the previous double bottom. You can see we flushed it, and we never came back to retest that level. We never even came back close to it until around 10:30 up to around 148. We never got back to that flush point, that previous support level at 149, and in the morning, it just simply died off. Very aggressive, no dead cat bounces, basically 30 minutes of just red candles, and at this point, you just have to chase it. You have to chase it. You have to take advantage of it. That's the only way you make money on that type of move, unless you swung traded some puts. But right there is a fantastic example of me not finding my entry. The weakness of my strategy, no break and retest. If we got a break here, if we had a retest, I would have been all over this thing, getting very aggressive for that potential retest rejection, but that simply did not happen. Now, I don't want to make my strategy sound terrible or that it doesn't set up, because it does quite a bit, but I'm being open and transparent with you guys. There are days like today where the selling pressure is just so strong that you never get that dead cat bounce. You never quite get that entry point if you are looking for break and retest entries. Today was a great example of this. I wanted to make this video, share with you guys the weaknesses of my strategy. An example like this today was a weak day for me. I could barely find any trade setups. In hindsight, you look at these plays, you say, damn, if I just bought puts, I could have made so much money. But sticking to the strategy, staying true to the strategy, understanding that if you stick to that strategy, you will minimize your losses, you will stay to a certain trade plan, and in the long run, you would hope that that is what leads to your success. So whether you learned something from today's video, or if it's just an eye-opener to some of you guys out there to really review your strategy, understand the strengths and the weaknesses, hopefully help you formulate some type of strategy heading into the new year. I hope that this video does that. I hope it serves a purpose to you. I'm sharing with you guys some of the weaknesses of my strategy, and I hope you take this as a learning lesson. I hope you take it as a way to review your own strategy and find the weaknesses and the days that you should stay away from. If you enjoyed today's video, if you learned something from it, press that like button, subscribe to the channel. I hope all of you nothing but the best into the next trading year. 2023 should be very exciting. Some crazy things going on in the market. If you want to trade live with me every single day heading into the new year, I have some discounts down below. You guys can check them out. This is live until January 8th. Feel free to check it out if you want to go ahead and join. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.